My daughter passed away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 15 years ago, a couple weeks ago. And it's taken me this long to complete the book. I've sat down at 3 different times writing the parts, and then over Christmas, New Year, put it all together and finally went, I did what I told her I'd do. So actually, we assumed she would be writing the book, but that didn't work. She didn't make it. And so the book is about Brandy, my daughter's story, and it's mostly about advocacy, which is what my heart is. I've been an advocate my whole life. I love being an advocate.
Okay. And in Brandy's case, it was about her medical care, or?
In Brandy's case, the book focuses on medical advocacy.
Okay.
And in the back of the book, and it's also going to be a pullout, but it's like a workbook to where it actually gives you the steps on what an advocate can do. And then I believe an advocate needs an advocate themselves, which I call a liaison in the book. So it talks about what a liaison can do. Nice. So, for example, the first 4 months, they thought Brandy had a different diagnosis, trigeminal neuralgia, and that's where we were all going, thought she was having brain surgery, and there was a lot of conflict about that. And then finally, because the same issues were still happening, finally, one of the ER appointments, they found the tumor. She had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she was diagnosed with stage 2B. And so everything went from working with Hodgkin's lymphoma and her cancer. And unfortunately, she was allergic to the medication. So the medication, bleomycin, she became toxic. And so what happens with bleomycin is that it grows fibroids on your lungs. And then when it grows on your lungs, you can't breathe. And so you need oxygen. Well, oxygen is the host to grow the fibroids. So it's fatal.
So I'm really sorry about Brandy, but I'm really curious about advocacy. And part of the reason I'm curious about it is that, my wife got really, really sick.
Yeah.
And I would say that I was her advocate.
Right.
And walked through that for quite a while. And yet it was pretty damn awful. And the other thing that I realized was I'm not really smart, like holding information, remembering stuff. I'm curious just enough, but probably not as much as I should be. And I know that when the doctors, and I'm needle adverse, like I really don't like needles. I don't like hospitals. I really don't like doctors and nurses. I don't like to be in the room when there's all kind of needles going on. So there were conversations happening, and I knew that I needed to listen and pay attention and focus and remember, but I wasn't really good at it. And I would frequently call people who were smart, find someone smart, who could remember, and then we could talk about it afterwards, to come and listen while the doctor was telling me what's going on today. Like, this is what's going on. This is what our plan was. So I'm very curious, obviously your situation ended way worse than mine because my wife is doing amazing.
She is.
But it was quite a journey of advocacy. And even still, we still talk. Just the other day, we were having a long conversation about what happened and my role in it, and how in some ways I did very poorly. In some ways I was quite heroic, but I mean, it's an important thing to prepare yourself for and understand and the whys, like why is it important and what could happen. And, in a lot of ways I found, doctors and nurses at sometimes they were quite amazing and at sometimes they were quite awful. And if I wasn't there, it would have been way worse. And so I just want you to talk more about the advocacy part. And what's the point of your book as far as it relates to the advocacy piece?
Okay. So Alec, everything you said is in the book, meaning that your crisis is different of the actual, reason in situation, but they're not different, so in other words, whether they live or die, it's not different. Whether it's cancer or whatever your wife had, it's not different, meaning that all that stress you went through and all of those things you're mentioning is what I believe everyone goes through in a crisis medical situation. And I did too. And I am very strong. I'm a leader. I am the one who does listen. I take notes. I do all that stuff. And I should have had a liaison. So to answer some of your questions that you asked is that I talk about in the book in the advocacy section. So you walk through my daughter's journey first, which will probably make you sad and angry because the things you said, sometimes they're great in the hospital. Lots of times they are not. And doctors, in our case, they didn't even want to talk about death, even though it was imminent. So you lose opportunity, like for us with our loved one. That was one of my regrets because we went with a no regret model, and that they didn't knock on our door and say, hey, she's not going to make it, while she was not intubated. Well, she could talk to us, and that didn't happen. They kept saying she's going to go home. So to answer some of your questions on advocacy, the great thing about all of that is you bring a friend with you. That will be your liaison. You're going to take notes and your liaison is going to take note. But when the doctor's talking, and mostly in medical ease that we don't understand, you're concentrating, but then all of a sudden, like your wife, right? She's going to ask you questions. So you go here and talk to her. They're still talking, aren't they? But your liaison can actually keep taking those notes, or you can video the meeting, or you can tape record the meeting and listen later.
So that's one of the, so I've had a couple thoughts going through my brain while you're talking. One is, it's not just the staff that can be aligned against you. It can be the insurance company and the actual hospital and organizational structures and the separateness or the connectedness of them. And how do I say this? They're often just protecting themselves. Yeah. They do things that aren't in the best interest. We saw this. I saw that at times this institution would protect itself and sort of, rally around themselves at the cost of my wife's health and well-being. Right. And I won't go into any details, but suffice it to say, there's more than just staff. There's organizational structures that are aligned.
I talk about that. I talk about things that an advocate's going to run against. And one of that is the hospital, insurance companies, and so on, to be prepared. Also, I don't know if you were a POA, power of attorney, for your wife. I set my daughter up immediately with a will and stuff when she was diagnosed. 95% cure rate for my daughter, just, and she died, diagnosis to death, 4 months. So that wasn't even in our mind, but I just was mindful enough to know to do that and did the directives and all of that. The reason you do that is so that now you can talk to all those doctors and all those nurses and the insurance companies or whomever all the players are. And we talk about that in the book, that these are all the possible players, and there'll be more, but you might run into. And insurance is one. We had the doctor saying there's no way they're sending a hospital bed to your home. And I'm like, well, there's no way she can be in a bed other than a hospital bed in my home. So what you get to do is you can call a care team conference. And legally, they have to all show up, either by phone, by Zoom wasn't really around back then, but phone, Zoom, or in person. And the social worker at the hospital has to set it up in a very quick, reasonable amount of time. And we did that. But it still took 9 days in a reasonable amount of time. But my point about that is that you then have the right to talk to them. You could have videoed that. You could tape record that, all those kind of things. Because you're right. It's the hindsight that's 2020, right? I'm like, should have had this, right? Yeah. But I asked that insurance guy that was there at that meeting, because they have to be there. I said, that guy says you won't put a hospital bed in my house. And how can she get there? And he goes, we will do that. So it's a time that you can ask these questions. And my daughter was on oxygen, like 6 liters. You can't be on oxygen over 4 in your home. How do you propose we're going to take her home when they keep saying they're discharging her the next day? Yeah. But that's a great thing to have, is that ability to know. And so I tell those things in the advocacy. These are some of the things you can ask. These are the things you can do. These are the people you're going to want. These are the legal steps in the sense, I'm not an attorney, but, get a power of attorney, get the directives and stuff. So,
Okay. So it's an interesting concept, your book. But what keeps going through my mind is all the people out there thinking, well, I don't need to do that. Who should buy this book?
Who shouldn't? Everybody should have this book, especially as a resource in the back. Also, I have resources in the back of the book as well, plus note sections. But number one, I think every medical personnel or person in school for medical should read this book, so they understand from the other side of the coin, the perspective of not only the person sick, but the people helping that person. I think they should read the book.
Nurses and doctors.
Nurses, doctors, CNAs, NACs, all of that. Okay. Absolutely. Surgeons. Also, your first responders. Who's the first out there? And you mentioned chaplain as not being one of the heroes. And chaplains, I'm finishing that at the end of this month. And I will be going out on those either fire or police calls and stuff. So you are also first responders in that stuff.
You should put chaplains in there.
We are quite open.
I was a chaplain for 8 years with Spokane Police.
That's what you said.
Yeah, and I really liked it. It was really honorable, but it's interesting that it's not considered a hero, but it truly is. It truly is. I mean, they're in harm's way. Almost everybody that was a chaplain in the Spokane Police Department basically wears an outfit that looks exactly like the police. They have their badges. They wear all black.
Well, and I would conclude you because you are working in conjunction with a first responder. So I would do that.
I've been shut down before.
But first responders, well, same with fire, because chaplains are in fire districts as well and so on. But they're the first ones out there. And, suicide rate amongst first responders, veterans, and military is huge because of all they've seen and all they witness and all they deal with. Yeah. And because of that, this would be a great thing, not only for an advocate to help them through their crises of seeing all that trauma, but also to help some of those people that they help.
Nice.
So I do think that first responders, most definitely. And we look at educators and first responders as well. So educators, of course, how many kids do they get to come to school who have never been fed or never cared for, or come with bruises and so on? Advocacy comes in so many different ways. We're starting a new pin. So the pin is an A, and purple represents medical. But like military advocate is actually they're all A's, but it's like the flag, so it has stars and stripes and white on it. It's pretty cool. And then we have like financial advocate, and that's green, and you have legal advocate and so on. And we have 10 categories where.
You're losing me. No. And really? I'm not because I'm not interested. I don't understand. I totally understand why someone in the hospital would need an advocate because, sometimes they're unconscious. Sometimes they're in so much pain. They can't make decisions by themselves. And you need someone there to advocate in their behalf. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about teachers need an advocate. People with money need an advocate. You lost me. Like, I don't understand.
So the teachers
let's just pick one.
Okay.
And talk about.
Stay with medical.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's not do medical.
All right. Let's not.
Let's move away from medical. Okay. You're saying that people in the military need an advocate.
Sure.
People that have financial. What are you even talking about? Like, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Let's talk about medical, or excuse me, military.
Okay.
And from my. So my dad was in the military. My grandma's in the military. I'm not military, but they were. And as a loan officer, I do VA loans all the time.
Okay.
And unfortunately, and I teach classes and so on, most veterans, don't even realize they can use a benefit to buy a house. They also don't know they can use it more than once. They think it expires after a certain time, and it doesn't. They could potentially even have two of them at the same time. They don't know that. Okay,
stop for a second. So this is very interesting information. Is this covered in your book, or is this...
No.
This is just true?
This is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
my workbook, remember I told you it's like a workbook in the back?
Yeah. Okay.
So the workbook will be pulled out, and it's medical if you want, but we'll have one on military as well. Then we'll have one on legal as well. We'll have one on financial as well.
This is a far-reaching book here you got.
Well, the idea is to educate. And to allow people to understand what to do when they have somebody who needs help.
Okay.
I had a gentleman friend. He got scammed like $300,000. He needs a financial advocate.
Okay.
Right. So it's all different life situations. Really, to me, it takes a village.
Yeah.
So if you do it alone and he was in the military because, I'll do it. I'll take my, you need help. We have friends. We need someone to help us through the process.
It's such an interesting concept. There's so many pitfalls with it because, so many of us are proud and don't feel like we really need someone to come alongside. I know so many people that if you said, I want to be your advocate for this or that, they're like, yeah, I got that covered. Thanks a lot. In fact, being a coach, honestly, it's one of the real struggles as a spiritual director and a coach. My job is to kind of be an advocate, right? Helping people see what they don't see, find clarity where there's not clarity, and help them find action. But as a general rule, most people don't feel the need to have that kind of eyes on, I
assistance
guess. Yeah, it's like they're like, yeah, no, I'm good. And it doesn't matter almost who I talk to. There's a general feeling that they don't need that sort of assistance. So, and what you're saying.
Do you have coaching clients?
Yeah.
Yeah, because even though they may say that, they still do.
No. I'm saying that the people that aren't clients that refuse, to meet me and I'm not saying I'm perfectly great for everybody, but it is one of the objections that I run into is that there's a general American independent streak among especially business owners and leaders in ministry and work that they don't particularly like the idea that they have, need of, someone else to come alongside. And it's a similar sort of dynamic, I think.
Yeah, except with coaching, they're not they could be in crisis, actually. It could be that their company's failing, right, and stuff. And it is the awareness of that. Because I'm a certified coach as well. So not all people who come to coaches are in crisis. And
they shouldn't be.
Yeah, but by the time they finally reach out, they may already be in crisis.
Which is too bad.
Yeah, and need that extra help. So it really is an awareness of.
But you're saying to buy the book before you get to the crisis so that you understand the concepts of advocacy and liaison before you get there.
Well, hopefully, right. Because when you're in crisis, there is no, you're in the game. And, whether if you play sports or not, right? It's the last 2 minutes of the football game. That's when you're in crisis. And all the things come at you and you're making life and death decisions, with your wife. We don't need to talk about her illness, but, you are making those decisions on the spot. And you're like, crap, did I ever hear that right? Do I remember that right? If you have someone there, if you read the book and have a knowledge of things that could happen, then you're going to be a little more prepared, like in anything, right? Yeah. So that when a crisis comes, if the only thing you remember is, hey, there's that book, let me go get that, and I can flip through the back end and do that. But it's like anything. We aren't born with that knowledge.
Yeah.
We aren't. You have to learn that knowledge.
Yeah.
And if we wait until someone's in actual crisis to gain that knowledge, we're not going to have it. Like me, as smart as I thought I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I could have been better at how I dealt with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I mean, I did everything right at the time with the tools that I have. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying here's a book that adds more tools.
So I would say that every husband and every wife should definitely read the book. And seriously, if your parents are older than us,
you should kids read it.
you should read the book, especially if you're the oldest and most responsible child of the family. And then I think that every leader should definitely read the book.
Yeah.
And everybody in the medical field and in the well, and every pastor. Let me just say that, like every pastor should really have
every chaplain
and pastor.
Absolutely.
Is that when people face real trial, they look for someone to contact because they don't know what to do. I know that that's in my heart, right? If when Linda went down, I called two really smart people that I knew that could come and listen and pay attention. They would care about me, but they were also there in the moment to watch and observe. One of my buddies was basically, we would be talking, but he would have his ear to the room while he knows everything that happened because he's just got that kind of memory. And I was in a fog the whole time. So anyway, it's a big part of my journey with Linda, that's for sure. So I'm really grateful that you came on. How do we get a hold of the book?
And stuff. The book's called Will They Hear Me Now? And we're hoping in the next 2 to 3 months it will be launched through Amazon. Okay. And so we do have, the website is not up and running, but we have a website, and it would be bmcenterprise.org right now. Okay. We're looking to do a 501c3 and build a foundation so that those funds can go to help people in advocacy situations and stuff. So, well,
if someone wants to get a hold of you, can they just call your phone or text or email, or what's the best way to reach out?
Email me at info@bmcenterprise.org. Okay. So,
You'll text me that one and I'll put it on.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, that'd be good. And, I just want to say about the fog, it's real. I talk about that in the book.
Yeah.
It is real. And you were very smart, even though you don't think you're smart, to have those people come.
Well, I'm smart. I'm just not really smart.
I was the one who thought, I got this because I'm excellent in emergency situations. Yeah. Fabulous. Yeah. But I didn't realize how much I needed help.
Yeah.